Chapter 61. You are listening at Novel Full. Magic and swordsmanship classes with father. I knew my mother would make a fuss if I asked her something so outrageous. On the other hand, my father was more narcissistic than her, so I had high hopes that in today's classes with him, I could ask him out. And I did. "Father, is it possible for me to get an accessory made out of that big bug's magic crystal?" I asked him. "And as I said, you'll have to be." "Ha! What's with the question out of nowhere?" "Sylphie, were you even paying attention?" he said in response, his tone that of anger. Currently, we were in the middle of the grasslands, near Yggdra. The two of us were sitting down over small pieces of wood made into improvised chairs. He had brought 2 wooden swords to practice, and as he spoke to me about the boring stuff related to the heart of the sword, I ended up asking him this without actually thinking it twice. I was. The thought just popped up in my mind when I remembered how you gloriously defeated such a being, I told him. Ooh. I see. So, you're wondering if it could be possible to. Ha. But why? You already have 2 powerful accessories, my father said in response. I just want to see if I can use dark magic with it. Mother said I could use all magic, right? I replied. But you still can't use water magic with the earrings Aquarina gave you, right? He countered. Ugh, he got me there. Then again, this was due to a reason which was quite intricate to explain. I couldn't possibly just tell him, "Father, I have a system," or something stupid like that, right? However, I knew my father had a weakness for his daughter. He was fascinated with me and loved to make me happy. Thus, using my beloved's father devotion towards me, I tried to be cute and asked him this out of mere selfishness. "See, can I get it for my 5th birthday, pretty please? I will love you forever if you do," I said to him as I went puppy-eyed. In response, my father looked at me as if I had become a very dangerous being, more dangerous than the monsters he had fought. I sensed his heart beating fast, his cheeks becoming redder by the second. Fine, I will try and see if I can find a way. But no promises, all right. He sighed, petting my head before kissing me on the forehead soon after. "I love you, Papa." Mooch, mooch, mooch. I kissed his entire face to make him happy, which perhaps reinforced his resolve to get the accessory made. He. All according to plan. Manipulative. Maybe just a bit. But I don't have any bad intentions, and I don't plan to ask him for anything else. I just want to see if I could get something similar to Ignatius with Beelzebub. Perhaps this monstrous fly would be easier to convince than this prideful dragon. It's definitely a gamble. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, my father finally began our classes on fire magic and swordsmanship. Very well. Today's classes will be divided into 2 parts. Basic fire magic, and then swordsmanship after. After those 2, we end it with a little spar, father told me. A spar with my father. Well, that sounds dangerous. A spar? I asked. Yes. Every day we'll spar a tiny bit before dinner. Do you like the idea? Don't worry. You can go all out on your old man. I'm pretty resilient, father replied, hitting his chest while laughing. Father, you're misunderstanding me. I'm the one that's not resilient, I said with a sigh. Ha. Come on, I'll be gentle. Now, let's begin. Sylphie, show me your fireball. I want to check something, he said after. All right. You've already seen that my fireball is strange, I replied. Yeah. Show it to me. Seeing that I had no choice, I quickly gathered mana into the palm of my hand as I continuously activated Ember. Little fingertip-sized flames emerged one after another, merging with each other into a bigger and bigger flame. Of course, all of this happened in just a split-second, however the sight itself surprised my father once more. It's incredible how you can do this. You're using the ember spell as if it was a building block that would slowly build up into a fireball, but it's so fast I can barely grasp it. Ember is the lowest tiered fire attribute spell there is. You're using it to cheat your way into higher tiered spells, aren't you? He asked. What? My father is amazingly astute. He figured out the whole process just like that. Then again, that's to be expected of a hero of flames. Something like that. I conjure ember continuously. It seems to be very easy for me for some reason. After that, I build up to other spells from it. By combining the embers, I soon admitted. I see. Well, that's very interesting. But Sylphie, have you tried conjuring just conventional fire magic though? He wondered. No. I don't know how, I replied. Then, it's time for your father to teach you a few spells. Well, the very one you use, but through magic circles. I want to see if you can make runes by yourself. If you combine your ability as a sorcerer with rune-based magic, you'll see an incredible increase in damage output, Father told me. Really? Indeed. Although sorcerers have it easy with magic, if you combine rune-based magic into it, like your mother might have taught you, you can find an increase in the power of your spells. Then again, it might take some time for you to swiftly conjure runes and magic circles, but you're still growing, so let's begin right away. After saying that, my father quickly began to teach me the runes to make up a magic circle of the second weakest fire attribute spell, Ember Shot. In essence, it's just ember that's fired at a fast speed, but since it's small and it disappears pretty quickly, it's not really that strong. However, he uses it to start bonfires. I've seen my mother also use it sometimes. The runes are heat, flame, movement, and fast, said my father as I created the runes. Each one was based on a word, the words my father mentioned. For some reason, words were magic in this world. By using runes, or magic words, one could string them to make up a magic circle, and magic comes out naturally after that. Flash. Chapter 62. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fire Magic Classes by the hero of Blazing Flames Flash. Ember Shot was conjured without me messing up this time, with the flame being sent flying across the skies, never to be seen again. Wow. That was good. You could probably use the Ember Shot continuously like this with your amazing mana pool, Sylphie, Father said after I tried Ember Shot for the first time. Hee. I'm beginning to believe that I might really be a genius, I said in response. Then again, despite that, it was more of the system helping me. I still used mana usage and all the passive skills I had to enhance my ability to make runes and magic circles. On top of that, the magic circles I made was just tier 1, the lowest tier. Through the Ember skill, I could conjure spells of higher tiers, but without this cheat that helps me build up flames and shape them to my liking, this task becomes tedious. However, I should feel prideful that I've managed to conjure a fire-based spell of my own without the aid of Ember. Even if it was just a slightly bigger Ember that was fired at a fast speed. Well done, Sylphie. You seem to have learned it in just a few minutes. See? That wasn't so hard. Now try doing these ones. After that, my father began to teach me step by step on how to conjure 3 more spells. Actually, he was way faster than Mother at this. I guess Mother used most of the time for class teaching me the basics and introducing me to certain things. On the other hand, my father didn't focus on that, instead making me copy his spells. The second spell he made me reproduce was the classic fireball, but he wanted to see if I could use it without embers fusing together. Thankfully, I was able to reproduce it after a few seconds of conjuring and building the magic circle, but obviously, just using ember for that short cast was way easier. Nevertheless, a decently sized fireball emerged as I fired it into the skies, where it exploded quite beautifully. Good. Good. My father nodded in approval while crossing his arms. From the looks of it, he seemed to be enjoying teaching me how to use fire magic. Now let's do this one. Fire Arrow. This is a spell that's a staple for every beginner fire magician. You can't call yourself an apprentice fire magician without having mastered this one spell, Father said to me. Fire Arrow, huh? I can make it easily with Ember, even the greater version, Fire Spear, is not much of a problem. But to conjure it through runes and magic circles, it's proving itself to not be so easy. Conjuring magic circles is not really that hard. You simply engrave the words that make up a magic circle into thin air, activating the phenomena of magic. Each rune corresponds to a word, each word combines into a phrase, and this phrase materializes into a spell through the infusion of mana. Of course, making runes costs mana as well. Heat, shape, change, longitude, long, sharp, heat, fierce, fast, movement. These were the runes that made up the simple magic circle that could conjure Fire Arrow. At some point, you're able to learn it by memory, but it took me some time to conjure it completely. It was my first attempt at doing so, after all. Flash. Fortunately, each rune merged together and spiraled into a beautiful circle. Fire Arrow. Soon, a marvelous arrow made out of flames emerged out of thin air, flying at an incredible speed towards a dummy my father had just put on the ground. Clash. The entire dummy was set on fire as its head was blown off. My fire arrow seemed strong due to the intensity of mana I added to it, almost hitting the limits of the magic circle itself before it could explode due to being overcharged. Now that I think about it, I can conjure even stronger magic than what is normally possible. With that in mind, ain't I actually pretty amazing? Great. Now, a harder one that you've already used. My father then showed me the recipe for the magic circle that conjured Fire Barrier. This one was a spell that could help me conjure a barrier of flames, or a shield to be more exact. I had been able to create one before by combining many embers, but approaching through conventional rune-based magic was definitely interesting. Among the runes required, there were a few such as protection, shield, shaping, defense, and so on. They were like a single word in a letter. Which is what I guess what runes are. As these words are combined like building blocks being stacked to build a wall, the spell would be generated. Flash. Sometime later, a small shield made of flames emerged before me, erecting from the ground over. It was warm, but it actually didn't hurt me. Also, it didn't burn the grass below either. Then again, I could only attribute to it as the mysterious properties of magic. Amazing. My daughter is really talented. Sylphie, in just 2 hours, you've already learned all of the basic spells a fire magician would have. You know it took me like a year to learn them, right? Plus, I had to undergo intensive training to drill them into my mind. It's clear you got the knack for it more than your father, my father said just as the spell was dispelled, grabbing me with his arms before raising me up high in the air. Hee, really? Am I really that great? I asked. Of course. Normally, I don't like to be egocentric, but I want to drown in his praises for a bit longer. After the rundown on basic fire magic, the swordsmanship part of class finally began. It started rather simple, actually. I know you're just 4 years old, Sylphie, and I won't make you go through the same arduous training my father once made me go through. After all, I know you're not fit for that. You're my little princess and I would never treat you so harshly. Back then in our camp, we were all mercenaries, so as the kid of a mercenary, I had to do everything I could to grow strong quickly, or I would get killed, Father told me. Oh. You were a mercenary, Papa? I asked. Well, yeah. At the age of 5, I was already able to use 10 different sword techniques and I've already slain around 13 bandits. Now that I look back at it, it was harsh, but I had to learn quickly. The world was harsh, unwelcoming, and cold back then. My father cared for me, but he also wanted me to contribute to the mercenary clan, father said in response. I see. Anyways, that's better saved for another time. For now, let's begin. Grab this. With that, my father tossed me a wooden sword. Now, come at me with everything you got. Chapter 63. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Intense sparring between father and daughter. After training me on fire attribute spells, my father gave me a wooden sword and told me to use everything I had on me to attack him without thinking about it. For some reason, he hadn't taught me any move at all. I guess he was mostly expecting me to use whatever I had at all to fight against him. Perhaps he's trying to test my talent with the blade without having been taught anything at all. At the same time, he also wants to test my physical abilities. I haven't been trained physically, but as the daughter of two heroes, I'm bound to develop superhuman strength. Then again, eating dragon meat and bathing in its blood also helped. Okay, Daddy. I told him, holding my blade with the stand I learned from my previous life. If he wants me to show him if I'm naturally talented or not, then I guess it's time to go all out. That stand, my father muttered with surprise. Without waiting for him to blink, I infused mana into my body. My muscles tensed up and the power of my body was enhanced with greater strength. This was the body strengthening technique I learned in my previous life, which I relearned in this life. It was hard to adjust it since I have infinite mana. After all, if I infused too much, my body might explode into pieces. That's why I had to be careful and only infuse a tiny bit of it. Flash. With that, I jumped like a spring towards my father at a speed he was surprised to see from his daughter. Flames suddenly flickered from my feet, which I did through the use of ember below my feet to explode and propel me forward, something I named Fire Charge. Fast, my father could not help but say as my wooden blade suddenly hit his in an instant. Clash. Hwa. Without even giving him any time to rest, I showered my father with full-on offensive moves. During that, my blade moved vertically and horizontally as if I was dancing with it. Surprisingly, this was just a basic technique named blade dance, which used multiple lesser blade techniques together to form a string of hits. If you catch someone off guard with this, they wouldn't be able to properly retaliate and would be forced into a defensive stance, which could be abused to deal even more damage. Eventually, their stance would be broken so you could kill them before they could even counterattack. But of course, I was fighting with my father, so the chances of that happening were very unlikely. Clash. 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 Amazing, he exclaimed. With that, my father suddenly smiled with fascination, a fascination I had never seen before on his youthful and handsome face. I knew why he made such a face. In short, my father was a battle junkie raised by a ruthless mercenary. He grew to love fighting after all. I can't say I'm in the same boat as him, but I do enjoy fighting against an opponent that can fight back a bit. With that being said, my father, as the hero of flames with an incredible ability with the blade, was a worthy opponent. You're very good, Sylphie, father told me as he suddenly stepped back, twisted his body, and completely stopped my endless charge of blade attacks in one fell swoop clash. My blade ended up falling on the ground from that, but I didn't receive any damage or anything else at all. Just with that one swift attack, I saw the incredible technique in my father. His movement with the blade was precise, meticulous, and short. It was almost elegant to an extent, refined even. However, my father grabbed me with his arms and raised me up high into the air once more. Amazing, Sylphie-chan. You're so good with the blade. I never taught you anything before. Are you a natural genius by any chance? He asked. Well, maybe. I replied, averting my eyes from him. This. Amazing. The ability you used with the blade would have taken many years for someone to master. You used a combination of small techniques continuously, forming some sort of blade dance, didn't you?" he asked once more. "Huh. Yeah. That," I replied. "And the way you aggressively attacked, leaving me no choice but to defend. That's an incredible way to use the blade as well. You're a genius," he praised me. At this point, I feel bad. I shouldn't have gone too far. I'm not really a genius, father. All of that was just from the experiences I've accumulated. Ugh. Unfortunately for me, my father couldn't stop praising me and called me a genius in the blade. He began to tell me I would become the next sword monarch or something, and that if I kept growing stronger, I would even rival him, if not surpass him. I don't think I'll ever get that far, but it's nice to see that he has so much faith in his daughter. Now, Sylphie, let's continue. This time around, I'll be attacking you, so you have to show me your defensive moves, father said to me. After he was done talking, he leisurely moved towards me, moving as slow as he possibly could, which was already incredibly fast in my eyes. Clash. The wooden sword quickly clashed against mine as I held my blade in a defensive position. After that, I tried to move forward, but my father's strength was enough to make him seem like a wall. I couldn't move it nor budge it, no matter how much I wanted to. Clash. He then pushed forward and began to bathe me with simple attacks. In response, I defended as much as I could but eventually lost my balance and fell on my butt. Because of that, the blade in my hands flew into the air before falling on the ground nearby. Sometime later, I lost. "You're great, Daddy," I told him. "I've got to say, I'm quite surprised. You were able to stand your ground into my offense even with our difference in height for a few seconds. Plus, you intercepted each attack greatly as well. If it wasn't because you lost balance and fell, you would have been able to stand your ground for longer," he told me. Is that so? I wondered. Yeah. Now, let's go back to the basics. Stand up again, and let's do this over once more. I want you to have these abilities and techniques not only committed to memory, but also to your body, he replied. And like that, we ended up training until very late, which was before we had dinner. Chapter 64. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A month later, back with Aquarina. It has almost been a month since the classes with my parents began. Every day I either had a class with my mother or a class with my father. The classes with my mother included a lot of lessons from her. Most of them were explanations regarding the secrets of magic, spells, and other magic-related stuff, while the other half was purely spell practice. On the other hand, when I'm learning under my father, it was split between fire magic and swordsmanship. After almost a month of both, I naturally learned a lot. Then again, because these classes were basically never ending, even when I was sleepy and tired, I would still be forced to do these classes and do my best. Well, my parents had high hopes for my strength to reach greater heights under the right tutelage, so I couldn't possibly disappoint them. With my mother, I had learned a lot of nature-attribute spells. Yeah, surprisingly, we haven't moved from that yet. Aside from soil enhancement, there was plant enhancement, verdant light, life infusion, and even unique spells such as metabolism acceleration. These spells were the basis of nature-type magic, even though they also included the aspects of earth and life magic, which are the basic components of nature. Soil enhancement helped make soil richer, while plant enhancement could make plants healthier and grow faster. Verdant light was a healing spell, while life infusion helped a rotting wound suddenly gain life. The latter combined really well with healing spells, actually. And then there's metabolism acceleration. This spell lightly increases the metabolism of my body, enhancing my movement speed and senses in exchange for consuming a greater amount of energy. Father, on the other hand, didn't teach me any spells other than the ones he taught me on the first day. Well, he did tell me to make my own spell one day, but I'll just continue using Ember for now. It's the easiest method to conjure stronger fire-attribute spells for me anyways. He also taught me a few blade techniques throughout the month. Plus, we also have been sparring during the same time. While sparring, I noticed I was gradually getting better and better at the sword, even if I'm just wielding a wooden sword. I don't know for sure, but the sword might become my preferable weapon in the future. In any case, I continued working hard while also practicing on my own things such as mana usage and the like. Aquarina also sent me messages every day through the special artifact, which is pretty nice to listen to from time to time. Speaking of Aquarina, the storm over Aquarina's home had finally ceased, so now we were able to go back there safely. Well, I'm sure my parents could actually head there even in a thunderstorm, but not me. It seems they took me into consideration. Anyways, now that things were done with the winter there, we could actually go back, and that's what we were going to do now. Flash. At the moment, we were flying on top of Mother's familiar, the big white owl. To be honest, I missed seeing him. When she summoned him again, he greeted me rather politely. Surprisingly, he seemed to remember me. Now that I think about it, he's actually incredibly smart, plus he can talk. Can all familiars talk at some point? Anyways, I don't know what's his real identity, but I probably shouldn't ask something about it. From the looks of it, it was quite secretive. His wings flapped with great strength, already outside of the floating continent of Claudia within a short time. As we headed down to the continent of Galatia, there was a beautifully nice breeze that felt incredibly refreshing. I had gotten used to traveling like this. After all, I was already 4 years old. We've been doing this since I was 1 year old, so it makes sense that I would eventually get used to it. Even the high altitude doesn't affect me that much anymore. Then again, I still remember that one monster that emerged when we flew outside the first time. That monster inflicted a strange curse in my mind and made me hallucinate a dark future where, well, my parents died. Thankfully, that thing was just an illusion, so I'm happy that something like this would never happen again. For now, we flew down with the help of the owl. A few hours later, we reached the massive jungles where the Amazon lived, which was as lively and green as ever. It's like a secret natural haven that other human kingdoms had never been able to conquer. We're finally back. Did you miss your friend, Sylph? Mother asked me. Sure did. Aquarina also missed me a lot, it seems, I replied with a smile. I can tell. That little girl was sending you messages every single day, didn't she? Can't she let you be by yourself for a bit? Father said, letting out a light sigh. Well, we are best friends. Aquarina's like the sister I never had, so it's kind of understandable that she misses me, I told Father. I guess you're right. Your bond is strong. That's good. It's especially good because you two are heroes. Whenever you get to meet the other heroes in the future, the bond between you two will be clear, making you more capable of leading the others, Mother told me. Is that how it works? I wondered, slightly confused. Well, kind of. I don't know how much but yeah, kind of, Father answered. How? I asked. When two heroes have a bond of friendship within the group of heroes, they call the attention of others thanks to their tacit coordination. You could make use of this with Aquarina, which would allow you to lead the group through your bond in the future. It would allow you to know each other's weaknesses and strengths, making it easy for you two to fight together. With that said, something like that would make them naturally follow you, Mother explained. I see. Did something like that happen with you back then? I asked. We weren't anything like you two when we first met, sadly, but we did meet rather early, before the official meeting between heroes, Father told me. I see. It must have been fun, right? I wonder how you two met. I wondered. Well, your mother was rather feisty. To be honest, I didn't like her back then, Father replied. Feisty, well. You used to be a brutish kid back then, Mother chided in response. Maybe you're right, father said in defeat, letting out a sigh. Chapter 65. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Meeting with Aquarina again and Sylphie. Aquarina. At the very moment we arrived at the Amazon village, I was greeted by a cute 4-year-old girl with chocolate-colored skin, adorable and big aquamarine eyes, with long and silvery white hair, wearing a cute white dress. Naturally, that girl was Aquarina. After 3 years, she had grown into an even cuter girl than before. She's the little sister in my life. She always reminds me of my little sister in my previous life, who I gave up my life to save. Aquarina rushed towards me faster than her own parents could walk. Of course, her parents tried to tell her to slow down, but the girl missed me greatly, jumping towards me before hugging me tightly with her little arms. How have you been, Aquarina? I asked. Sad. I missed you, Sylphie, she said with a sigh, prompting me to caress her head. Man, she's definitely the cutest. Don't worry, Aquarina. I'm here now. The storm is finally gone so we can play around and do whatever we want now, I told her. I'm so happy. Let's head to my room. I have some new books to show you that Mama got me, said Aquarina in response to my words. After that, she tightly held my hand and carried me away from my parents, ignoring everyone else. I guess she really missed me. When we got there, she showed me all sorts of new fairy tale books. Most of them were cute stories for kids, though I also found some that were more mature, with stories involving deaths and deep messages. Has she been reading all of them? Well, she did learn how to read at the age of 3, so she has been reading like crazy ever since then. I do like reading as well, but I think Aquarina likes reading more than me. Then again, she is a bookworm. These are very interesting books. Want me to read you one? I asked. Yeah, this one. I like it when you read me books. She replied. These past few years I've always read her books, especially when the two of us were alone in her room. To pass the time, I read her books as she slowly ends up napping on my lap. She's seriously like my little sister at this point. I spent an hour reading a pretty thick fairy tale that was original to this world. The fairy tale told the tale of a corrupted man that was punished by the gods, turning into a skeleton. Surprisingly, the fairy tale was about his journey as a skeleton and how he slowly gained his flesh, muscles, skin, organs, heart, and so on by going through trials. It mostly taught about self-improvement and to always keep your humanity, to always have common sense and to also be righteous. Now that I think about it, that kinds of contradicts the point. In any case, the sense of being humane is still there, so I guess it's fine. I guess this teaches kids to not bully others or act against humans. Sylphie.Chan, have you ever seen a skeleton? Aquarina asked while resting her head over my lap as I sat down on the bed. She was scrolling through the pages of the book, looking at the illustrations. A skeleton. Well. As she asked me that question, I could not help but remember the last time I saw one. Oh no, I'm gonna have a horrendous nightmare later. I better not recall that day again if possible. I kind of hate skeletons now, actually. They've become my trauma, in some sort of way. Ugh. How about we go eat something instead? Are you hungry? I asked. A bit, but I want to cuddle with you a bit more. I missed sleeping by your side, she cried as she cuddled with me in bed and hugged my torso, rubbing her face over my chest while smelling the scent of my clothes. Hee hee. You really missed me, huh? Don't worry, I'm back now. I'll stay the entire week before going out again. We can still spend lots of time together, I told her. I am so happy, she muttered, closing her eyes as she seemingly began to nap while hugging me in bed. Ah. She's way too precious. While looking at her, I caressed her silvery white hair. It was silky and glossy. Then again, her warm little head was also nice to caress. Even her hair had a nice floral scent to it, just like mine. From the looks of it, her nap was becoming deeper. In fact, I think she went into a deep slumber. I can't wait to have lots of fun with her. Well, I should also nap for a bit before lunch. After that, we could go around the village and hunt some rabbits. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of fun to have when you're with your friends. With that, I slowly closed my eyes as I was rather tired from the ride. Surprisingly, I ended falling asleep quite quickly. The deep dreams soon embraced my mind as I felt rather dizzy all of a sudden. Ugh, did I eat something bad? My stomach kind of hurts. Suddenly, I found myself in complete darkness. I glanced around my surroundings. Have I landed inside my soulscape? System. Naturia. Are you here? I looked around for the two friends that lived inside my soul, but I couldn't find anything. Right now, it was as if I was in a completely dark place. This dark space. It was strange. There was a certain empty feeling to it, a certain malice that I couldn't properly grasp. Soon, fragments of the memories I had from that day when I saw that nightmare attacked me. I felt like my heart was beating fast, as if I was having a panic attack. My breathing had become strained. I felt like this body. Wait. I have a body. Huh. Isn't this my physical body? What? My physical body was transported here. This isn't a dream. As I thought this, I looked around my surroundings. Suddenly, I felt a tremendous presence behind me. A pure malicious intent was emanating from it. The all-encompassing bloodthirst it exuded made my entire body shiver in horror. I looked at this darkness, this phantom before me. Although it looks humanoid, I couldn't discern its true nature or its true appearance, but one thing's for sure. It looked utterly abyssal. It noticed something though. It had the head of a skull. Such a good child. Sylphie. As I heard that, I saw Aquarina a few meters away from me. For some reason, she was here as well. Chapter 66. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Trapped. Despair. For some reason, Aquarina was also here. And before us, darkness emerged, an abyssal darkness that I've only seen twice before. Beelzebub and then that one skeleton. But where are my parents? What's going on? How did we appear here in the first place? I don't understand what's happening. But the body I have now is my real body. If Aquarina is the same, then I can't possibly let her be hurt. Aquarina. I cried as I rushed towards her. The figure only glanced at us in indifference as I held Aquarina's hand and put her behind me. Sylphie.Chan, I'm scared. Is this a nightmare? Are we dreaming? She asked, her tone afraid. It's not a dream. You children, the future heroes that will slay our future lord, must be exterminated right now before you grow into a nuisance. I, Lord of Death, Hell, shall exterminate you too in the name of my king, the entity said, glaring at us with his empty eyes. Phantasmal flames soon appeared from the empty sockets of his eyes, as if they glared at our very souls. Why you're a demon king's remnant? I asked. So you know about us, little girl. I guess your parents, the heroes, have told you that much. Indeed, you're really dangerous. And you too specifically hold great power within you. This is truly perilous. I cannot let you live even for another second. Let's end this swiftly. I dislike hurting children, but compared to the thousands of children that your parents had killed in the past, it's not even comparable, right? The entity said in response, ending its statement with a question. Thousands of children? I asked. You want to know more? Well, unfortunately for you, I cannot go on. I must fulfill my destiny and slay you. This will be swift for the two of you. Stay still, the entity said. Soon, its entire body flashed at an incredible speed, rushing towards us. Then, the gigantic 4-meter-tall skeleton covered in shadows raised a scythe made out of phantoms, pointing it at us. What do I do? Am I going to die? Yeah, I'm going to die. But I don't want to die. No. Aquarina's with me. I cannot let her die either. What do I do? Flames. Flash. Boom. I concentrated my mind at this very moment as I saw 2 seconds in the future through my ability of foresight. In those 2 seconds, we were attacked. However, I stopped this future from happening as I infused mana into my Ember skill and multiplied it by 1,000 in a split-second. In an instant, an explosion of flames soon appeared. It was big enough to impact this giant and make him retreat, even if it was just a few inches. Ha! Those flames of yours would have been dangerous if you were to grow older, he said, crushing my flames by waving his hands. Soon, shadows suddenly rushed towards us in the shape of countless tentacles with sharp spear-like tips. Flash. 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 Fuck. Come on, appear. My biggest firewall. Truum. I concentrated my intent into the shape of the firewall my father had taught me to make, which he had helped me perfect through our training in classes. I combined both my unique spell casting with conventional spell casting. Thanks to that, a massive magic circle emerged out of thin air in a split-second as a wall of flames was erected in front of me, reaching as high as 40 meters. I felt an incredible stream of mana being siphoned from my body after that. My body felt the pain from it, and yes, it was quite taxing, but I had to push my limits. I have to use my infinite mana to its limit if we want to survive. Clash. 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 The massive shadow tentacles soon hit the flaming wall, raining it with powerful blows that began to send pieces of materialized flames from the wall flying. Shit. It's not working. Ha ha ha. Not bad for a stupid brat. The skeleton laughed. I don't know why, but he suddenly changed his personality, going from incredibly solemn to completely lunatic. I knew he was a monster, but only now was he showing us his true nature. What's happening? Cried Aquarina. At this moment, tears were about to pour out of her eyes. Obviously, she was scared. I have to protect her. Come with me, Aquarina. We have to escape. If this space isn't a soulscape, then there should be some exit. I told her, holding tightly onto Aquarina's hand. After that, I ran away, as fast as I possibly could from hell. You're not going anywhere. Slash. His scythe easily sliced my firewall into bits as his speed completely outmatched ours. Unsurprisingly, he caught up to us in an instant. If it were any other time, I'd say he was incredible. I couldn't even escape from this monster. But since he aimed to kill us. More fire. More flames. Come on. Flare cannon. Flare wash. I combined thousands of embers and my endless mana, as well as the power of runes that my father has taught me, all together into a massive beam of all-consuming flames. This was perhaps my strongest spell, and I already felt my entire body weakening to the point I could barely sustain my own feet. And that was all because I was infusing mana into my muscles, forcing myself to walk. Boom. Grua. The skeleton actually cried out in pain this time as he was sent flying for a few meters. The beam continued to emanate out of my hands, consuming everything around me as I gritted my teeth. Die. I roared as the skeleton took the entire beam head-on. However. Gahaha. Ha ha ha. As expected of a hero. Struggling will only make it more worth it. Eh. Not bad. Let's see. Can you resist the embracing power of death itself? Death beam. Flash. While he was being devoured by the flames, the skeleton pointed his index finger towards me. Then, a mass of deathly energy was gathered in a quarter of a second. The next quarter of a second, a beam of pure death pierced through my flames. It was so fast I couldn't evade it nor create a wall to defend myself against it. Boom! Unsurprisingly, the beam hit me directly. I felt like my entire body began to decay into nothingness thanks to it. I was dying. Not yet. Suddenly, the voice of Thea resonated through my ears as divine protection kicked in. After that, a flash of bright yellow light emerged and covered my body, protecting me from this beam that would have disintegrated me into ashes in the first place. Flash. Dot. Chapter 67. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Desperate struggle, Sylphie, Aquarina, time for lunch. Are you girls sleeping? As Phelan entered Aquarina's room, she suddenly found out that her daughter and her friend were nowhere to be seen. Huh? What? Phy, she quickly expanded her senses, suddenly noticing that the familiar she had left to watch over the girls was completely sealed. Its invisible nature made it so that she couldn't see it at first. My familiar's sealed. How could I not detect this? Wait. This is death magic. No. As she realized what was happening, Phelan quickly rushed outside, calling Alan, Nephilim, and Shade, as all three of them rushed towards her in an instant. What's? Where are the girls? Alan asked. His face became paler and paler as time passed, swallowing saliva in nervousness. Shade quickly noticed that the familiar he used to watch over Aquarina had also been sealed somehow, without him even noticing it. What kind of power was this that it could even overpower the heroes that defeated the Demon King himself? This is impossible. My familiar. Sealed without me realizing it. Aquarina. Shade punched the ground in anger. In response, the entire place began to rumble. Aquarina. What could have taken them away? Is there a being capable of doing such a thing? Nephilim could not help but mutter. I'll search for them. I left holy marks on them. With that, Phelan suddenly coated herself in her own holy aura as a massive domain quickly appeared around her, covering the entirety of the place. Flash. Her eyes shone with bright light as her magic quickly began to work in less than a second. Her mind began to browse through space and time for the holy marks left in her daughter and Aquarina, until she noticed that they were nowhere but here. Through her magic, she realized they were in a different space. It was as if they were dragged into a completely different dimension, but positioned in the same place they were standing in. Another dimension. Phelan said in shock. Wait. So this is. It can't be. I'm pretty sure we killed the Dimensional Lord. After all, he was one of the 4 heavenly kings. That fight even took the life of one of our companions. Alan could not help but feel despair. But the Dimensional Lord is the only one capable of conjuring such advanced space magic. Unless there's someone we don't know about. Phelan said in response. No, it can't be. Why our children? Why not us? Shade roared, feeling utterly powerless. Stop being a crybaby, Shade. Nephilim roared back, grabbing Shade's head as she forced him to stand up. Nephilim. Aquarina. Shade muttered. There's no time to cry. Let's do this like we always do it. Together, Alan told everyone. How can we even access another dimension if we don't have her in here? Shade asked. How? Simple. We just have to break time and space, replied Alan. Soon, his eyes shone brightly, flames flickering from within. You mean it? Shade asked with a hint of doubt. You lack a lot of faith in your own power, Shade, Alan could not help but tell him. Soon, his muscles began to bulge to a great extent as a massive sword was summoned on his right hand. Troom. Familiar fusion. Flash. Suddenly, all the familiars Alan had a contract with fused into his entire body. Within seconds, feathers made of flames grew around his body, several foxtails appeared behind his back, while scales grew around his torso and legs. Then, a massive blazing helmet in the shape of a roaring dragon appeared over his head as his strength multiplied dozens of times. Sorry for doing this to your child's room, but there's no time to think about this. Ultimate technique. Inferno Blade. SLASSSSSH. Boom. The entirety of Aquarina's room was engulfed in flames in an instant as his blade pierced not through the outside world, but thin air. Crack. Crack. Spacetime began to crack like fine glass before Alan. I did it, he muttered as an insane smile appeared on his lips. At the same time, the entire village began to run away from the scene as an entire land of flames emerged around Alan. Surprisingly, his blade had pierced space and time. You actually did it in the first try? Shade asked in great shock. Help me out, roared Alan in response. Hearing that, all three heroes quickly began to help Alan. After all, they weren't going to give up that easily until they could save their children. Flash. I felt the voice of Thea resound throughout the dark space, the same goddess I disliked back then. Her divine protection kicked in and protected me from this lethal attack, which would have disintegrated me into ashes if not for it. The power of this death beam was incredible. It completely shrouded me with death to the point it turned all life in my body into nothingness. In other words, it was absolute decay. Though, it wasn't as if I turned into ashes. It was more like my entire body was rotting until it turned into ashes. However, the miraculous power of divine protection even shielded me from such a powerful attack. It felt as if my entire body went back to normal, as if time began to run backwards. I fell on the ground, my body still hurt, but I was still somehow alive. Divine protection. So you've already gotten blessed. Oh well, that's only once a day, right? If so, this one will surely kill you, said the skeleton, its dark voice resounding throughout the darkness. Sylphie. While screaming, Aquarina rushed towards me. Her entire face was crying desperately, her tears fell over my face, her little lips were trembling. Run. NNGH. Run away, please. Ah. No. I cannot. Death beam. Ah. I saw with my own two eyes as Aquarina's entire body was devoured by death. Soon, her entire body began to rot away incredibly quickly, but then. Flash. Don't give up. The voice of an adult man resonated across the space, covering her with oceanic water. Just like what happened to me, her body suddenly recovered, as if time itself reverted. You too. Ag. It hurt. Ha. Sylphie, Aquarina fell on the ground, having experienced the same horrendous thing as me. At this moment, she began to feel pain all throughout her body. Good. Now there's nothing else protecting you little girls. This is it, said the skeleton, getting closer to us. No. Naturia. Where are you? Spirit summon. I roared the words that my parents said when they summoned their spirits. Soon, a sudden explosion of emerald light came from my body. Thankfully, Naturia was summoned. Foo. Naturia, it worked. Ha. A spirit. Well, that won't change anything. Chapter 68. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I don't care anymore. I've been calling for Naturia this entire time, but she never answered my call. At this point, I felt like I was growing desperate. My mind was going crazy, my thoughts were becoming chaotic, and fear was taking over my heart. My entire body felt shrouded in this cold fear that I couldn't even remove. But when I muttered out those simple words, which I see my parents sometimes say to bring their spirits out, it worked. Out of all things, such words were actually enough to bring my spirit out even in the depths of darkness itself, even in front of the maws of death. I couldn't help but cry out in happiness when she appeared. Even in such a state, I was happy to see that I could still have her, even in my last moments. At this point, I was sure that bringing her out was just pointless. After all, I was in a situation where I would inevitably die. No matter how much I struggled, it would be futile. But there should be a way. I'm sure there has to be. I have to abuse my own abilities, my mana, everything. Even if it hurts, even if my body feels like it's going burst into pieces when I overuse my mana, even when I feel like my soul is going to tear apart into pieces. Foo. Naturia, it worked. Naturia emerged like a flash of green light in the middle of the darkness. It felt overwhelming, as if she had come to save me, a miracle even. But even though I thought her appearance would help. A spirit. Well, that won't change anything. As he said that, the skeleton slowly walked towards us. In the meantime, the shadows covering his body began to turn into long tentacles with sharp tips. Then, he pointed them at us. For some reason, he wasn't using Death Beam again. Why? Can't he easily kill us that easily? Or can he not conjure it yet? Certainly, such a strong spell couldn't be conjured continuously without any side effects. Perhaps he requires more mana, and he used it all up, so he's using something less costly. Whatever the case, the tentacles heading our way could easily pierce through my fire wall and our bodies, killing us on the spot. With that in mind, I looked at Aquarina struggling to stand up. I have to protect her, I can't let her die here. I've already died before, so I can die again. Sure. That was fine. But I don't want this precious little girl to die. I don't want to. I don't. Metabolism acceleration. Flash. I infused my body with the life-attribute spell as my metabolism was enhanced tenfold. From how the spell worked, the more mana I used, the more it was enhanced. In any case, I need to. I have to go all out if I don't want her to die. I'll use it all, even if my body is torn into pieces. I don't care anymore. Flash. My muscles suddenly began to hurt after I activated the spell, as if countless tiny needles were piercing them all. My organs felt the same while my blood began to flow so quickly that it was evaporating. My skin also became redder as vapor came out of my body. However, even though I was feeling great pain, I felt like my body was surpassing its own limits, the limits of strength that a 4-year-old could possibly reach. After getting used to it, I stood up in a single second, rushed towards Aquarina, before conjuring a firewall. All in 3 seconds. That was the same amount of time it took for the shadowy tentacles to reach Aquarina, successfully managing to block them. Flea Ash. Clash. 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 You got faster all of a sudden. No matter how much you struggle, the difference in power is way too big. You'll hopelessly die, and there won't be anyone coming to help you, said the skeleton, laughing maniacally as more and more shadow tentacles began to make their way towards me. Firewall. 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 Boom. 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 I continuously conjured the only spell that can do something for us. I needed to buy time, as much time as possible. Constant walls of flames began to appear one after another, protecting us all around and even more above us. On the other hand, an endless sea of darkness continued to fall over us like a rain of black spears. Clash. 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 The firewalls began to fall apart one by one in mere seconds. Unfortunately, I couldn't keep up for too long. My entire body was about to burst into pieces. Sure, my mana was coming out, yes, but my body. It was as if it was a balloon taking in too much air. In any moment, it would burst. Crack. And then, I felt it. The mana broke the bone in my left arm and shattered it into pieces in an instant. Crash. After that, my right arm exploded. Blood spurted out everywhere as I could see the bone below the muscles that were blown apart. Sylphie, Aquarina cried in horror as she saw my entire body beginning to be torn apart by the pressure of my mana. Don't worry. Ak. Fu. Naturia desperately conjured verdant light over my body. Although my wounds didn't heal, the bleeding stopped. Some scars emerged over the ugliest wounds, but even with all that, I was barely hanging on. Unfortunately, my healing spells were not strong enough, even with Naturia's help. I tried summoning roots and plants, but there wasn't anything I could use here. I had no seeds with me. Crash. Gahaha. Gotcha. Suddenly, the last firewall broke apart as shadow tentacles reached my body. Clash. 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 With the horrendous sound of my flesh being torn apart and pierced by dozens of shadow spears, I vomited out a mouthful of blood. I saw my arms, legs, torso, chest, all except my head, all of it was pierced by the shadow tentacles. NNGH. My mind began to flicker. It seems like I was about to die for REA. My senses started to become muddled due to this. I felt anemic. Ag. S.Sylphie.no. No. No. Ha ha ha. You're next, little girl, laughed the skeleton, looking at Aquarina. But for some reason, I wasn't dead yet. I don't know how this was possible. After all, I should be dead. My guts were splayed outside my stomach, my lungs were pierced, I couldn't even breathe. Yet. I'm still here. Oi. You've still got to kill me. I said as I touched the shadow tentacles with my hand. Soon, Naturia's very spiritual essence of nature and life began to flow inside the tentacles of death and darkness. Impossible, NNGH, UNNGRYYYYAGGH. Then, I heard the bastard scream in agony for the first time. Chapter 69. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The essence of life that I don't know why. In fact, I couldn't really say why. My entire body was pierced by these shadow tentacles. I could clearly feel the horrendous pain because of it. My legs were torn apart, bloodily falling apart into chunks. My heart was pierced, bursting instantly from the attack, plus my lungs were also pierced. Currently, I was drenched in blood. My stomach was pierced, and my torn apart intestines were also visible. The only thing that was intact ended up being my head. Maybe it's because this bastard decided to make me look at my own body before dying. Just for extra horror and trauma. However, I couldn't tell why I wasn't dead. My entire body, as mangled as it was, should be dead by now. But I wasn't. Could this be? The endless health from the system actually made me alive even when my body is disfigured like this. Is this the glitched HP that never changes its numerical value? Despite not regenerating automatically, I'm still alive. So what? If I'm reduced to a meat paste, will I still remain alive? If I rot away, will I still be alive, with my soul being stuck to this horrendous body? Well, I would have probably lost my consciousness if my head was hit and my brain was greatly damaged, but theoretically, my soul would still remain in my body. This is. Ugh. Even though the pain was still numbing my mind, I faintly glanced at the skeleton before me. In front of me, I saw Aquarina crying desperately. "Don't cry. I'm fine. It's not so bad when you're burned alive constantly by an anger dragon. It seems you eventually get used to the pain." I tried to buy more time for Aquarina. I knew our parents wouldn't sit down after their daughters disappeared. I had to buy as much time as possible. Aquarina doesn't have the same ability as me. If she's pierced like I was, she'll definitely die. And out of all things that could happen, I cannot let that happen. Oi. You've still got to kill me, I said, touching the shadow tentacles with my hand. Soon, Naturia's very spiritual essence of nature and life began to flow inside the tentacles of death and darkness. While doing so, I suddenly noticed that Naturia was also crying desperately. Her powers began to flow in great quantities, absorbing my mana. Now that my body was all torn apart, I guess using all the mana I had didn't matter that much, so I completely went all out, using my endless mana to its fullest potential. Flash. I suddenly felt as if my very soul and mind was being infused into the death and darkness of these tentacles connecting to me. I don't know how exact I could explain it, but my very soul dissolved itself into it. It fused with my endless mana, creating a wave of golden yellow essence that spread across the skeleton's shadows. For some reason, I realized the elements of nature and life were super effective against death and darkness if I combined them. Then again, the nature of life completely negated death, but I had yet to train this magic element, so I wasn't confident about using it. Until now. Naturia guided my hand, soon feeling and realizing that I had discovered a strange capability the unique composition of my body possessed. I saw as the shadow tentacles suddenly began to burn and dissipate into nothingness. Soon, the skeleton started to groan in pain right after that. Well, this was the first time he's genuinely in pain. Impossible, NNGH, UNNGRYYYYAGGH. Splat. My entire body soon fell on the ground as I destroyed the tentacles. Currently, I look like a horrendous and gory mess. For some reason, using regeneration spells on me multiple times didn't work. At most, some of the wounds I had closed, but other than that, no progress. While doing that, I faintly looked up as I saw that my life energy was spreading over the guy's shadows, turning them all into yellow gold essence, quickly dissipating it. What kind of magic is this? Not even tier 8 life magic should be much of a problem to me. He suddenly fell on the ground as the element of life continued to spread into his body. Suddenly, I saw something truly horrendous, his skeletal body began to grow flesh. Yes, muscles started to wrap around his bones, and even skin formed on top of it. It was definitely a horrid sight. What, revival spell? This won't work. However, he quickly cut it off. His entire arm fell on the ground and actually continued to regenerate as most of the essence was infused into it. On the other hand, the rest of his body was purified by his own darkness while my power was easily suppressed. Ha! He gasped for air despite having no lungs. From the looks of it, he seemed to have been utterly terrified by that. Good. I wish I could do much more, but I couldn't even talk now. My face was facing the floor, plus I think my nose broke and my jaw dislocated from the impact. The very least I could say about it would be, it hurts like hell. S.Sylphie. While that was happening, Aquarina kneeled before my corpse as she began to cry. Fuck, this is harsh. I didn't want her to see such a thing. But man, I wish I could do something else. My healing magic is not powerful enough, plus my mana is useless if I cannot use the spells I want to use. Trying to use spells doesn't work now. After all, my mind was too exhausted, while Naturia seemed to have fallen into a coma after using all her power. Why that you pest? I will turn you into ashes, the skeleton roared. Soon, he rushed towards me, summoning his scythe once more, a massive phantasmal scythe. You can somehow remain in your corpse despite dying. Are you some sort of undead? Well, no matter. With this scythe, I'll slice your soul in half and there won't be any second chances for you. Die. Soul. He can destroy my soul. If my soul is destroyed, then everything is over. I cannot even regenerate back. I will die for real. No. I don't want to disappear. This wasn't part of the deal, you damn god. Fuck. My entire body feels like I've turned into a mass of slime. I can't even move an inch. Aquarina. Please run away. Please. Run away. However, Aquarina suddenly fell silent as she looked at the skeleton, whose name was Hell. NGHS. Such strong aura. The skeleton stopped midway through his move as Aquarina's entire body began to emanate immense amounts of mana. Splash. Then, it was as if the might of the oceans was summoned. Chapter 70. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Awakening. I barely grasped the situation that was happening as my mind was continuously going back and forth between being conscious and unconscious. But for some reason, Aquarina suddenly felt like she broke. After crying desperately for a while, she fell silent. Her entire body began to emanate a strong amount of power soon after as mana was overflowing from her body like a constant stream of water. How much mana does this girl have? I couldn't tell, but I was certain it wasn't a lot compared to mine. Though, when compared to other people, she had a lot. An immense quantity of it. Was this because she's a heroine and the daughter of two heroes? I don't know, but that might be a possibility. Her power was incredible though, despite probably only having a tier 1 magic circle inside her soul. However, that didn't matter at all. Her pendant and her earrings suddenly shone brightly as her mana was absorbed by them. Soon, her soul began to overflow with azure energy, and then, the massive might of the oceans was summoned as the figure of a gigantic snake-like entity floating in the middle of the skies appeared. What? What is this? At this moment, her eyes were flashing with aquamarine light. It was as if Aquarina was not here anymore, but instead, something else took over. This wasn't even her undine spirit, this was something else. What? Wait a second. You're Leviathan. Hell suddenly fell on his butt over the might of the massive sea snake that emerged before him, roaring loudly as ocean waves constantly generated around the gigantic entity. He glared down at Hell with flashing bright azure eyes. He's Leviathan. The being inside the earrings and pendants that Aquarina has. But how? She didn't have the soul, right? How is this working? Maybe she ate his flesh. I don't know. The massive being glared down at Hell as the oceanic aura emanating from it spread across the entire place like a domain of oceans. It continued to expand and made everything seem as if we were in the middle of the sea. Wait, hold on a second. You're Leviathan, right? Don't you remember me? Hell. The Lord of Death, said Hell desperately. I never liked you anyways, you skull-faced hypocrite, replied Leviathan, quickly cutting off any sort of relationship between the two. NNGH. Why are you even trying to help her? And you're dead too. How are you here? This is your soul fragments. But why? Why are you helping the daughter of the ones that killed you? Hell asked. Because I find her worthy. Her gentle-hearted soul has captivated me, Leviathan told him. That, you've always been an idiot anyways. A stupid beast who was soft deep down. Don't worry, a mere soul such as yourself cannot possibly stand a chance against me. I'll slay you for good, roared the skull-faced hypocrite. Soon, his darkness began to emanate like an explosion of shadows. In the meantime, Leviathan suddenly looked down at me. "I'll be taking this," he said. Not long after, the earrings I had flew away from me, fusing with his materialized body. Flash. This. I don't know if it's enough, but it could buy us some time. It all depends on whether this bastard has become rusty. Troom. Suddenly, Leviathan shaped the oceanic domain around him into a gigantic sphere of water, firing it as a storming vortex of water towards hell. Boom. NNGH this. It's weak. Ha ha ha. You're really dead, aren't you? Hell said with glee as his shadow and death gathered into his body, exploding into a strong shockwave. Surprisingly, the vortex made by Leviathan was easily destroyed. My magic is not the same as before. Flash. Leviathan didn't even think twice as he flew straight towards Hell and attacked him with the materialization of his body. Clash. Groar. He roared loudly as his sharp fangs began to tear apart the shadows covering and protecting the skeleton. On the other hand, the skeleton fought back by firing multiple spears of darkness, piercing Leviathan's body. Though, I quickly noticed that it wasn't blood that was coming out, but just water. Slash. Sometime later, Leviathan suddenly raised one of his small arms, which had sharp claws, using them to slash through the face of the skeleton, tearing apart a chunk of his skull in the process. Clash. Wag. From behind the skeleton's skull, there was a groaning and howling phantasmal specter made of darkness roaring angrily. Is that his real body? So, the skeleton is like just a vessel. I guess all skeletons are not just skeletons, they also have souls. NNGH. I don't even know how I'm even thinking properly. In any case, not being able to breathe is horrendously annoying. Clash. Why that you damn snake? Why do you have to interrupt me when I was about to fulfill my destiny? Do you truly want these children to become the new heroes? Are you going against the world's will? You bastard. You're allying with the gods, aren't you? Hell roared as his shadows began to slowly overwhelm Leviathan. Clash. 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 Allying with the gods. I don't care about anything like that. I've chosen to protect this girl. And that's the end of that, roared Leviathan in response as he opened his jaws. Soon, an enormous quantity of oceanic water came out in the form of high-pressured vortexes, falling over the skeleton once more. Splash. Grag. Plus, you're the one to talk. You've already allied with the gods, right? Leviathan asked him. How did I know? Since when have you been able to create dimensions? The dimensional lord is dead. You've allied a god capable of summoning a pocket dimension for you, right? It appears that even gods want to kill the heroes now, said Leviathan. TCH. Not like you'll ever find out the truth. You're dying today, alongside those detestable children. Hell roared in response. After that, his power suddenly surged from his skeleton body like an immense explosion of spectral darkness. It was so strong that it began to encompass everything. Damn it. Leviathan suddenly formed a massive bubble with his entire water-based body as he covered both of us with it. In the meantime, the massive amount of darkness began to consume everything in the vicinity as I saw Leviathan struggling. Then, his soul began to slowly dissolve, with the stones that were making him up turning into ash.